Moments of his life. In video obtained by New York One, it all begins about 3 o'clock Thursday afternoon as police chased Graham into his home. Police say they believed he had a gun.
Clearly they were intent on getting into the house. They were intent on capturing this young man, and they were intent on doing whatever they did, and it's unfortunate.
Police say narcotics officers patrolling the area of White Plains Road and 228th Street put over the radio 2 separate times they thought Graham had a gun. Police say they ordered the team to stop, but he went into his house on 229th Street. Video shows several minutes passed between when Graham entered the house and when police finally gained access from the back through the first floor tenant's apartment.
What's clear, though, is that there was enough time for them to reflect on what's happening, and this tragedy should not have happened.
After knocking on Graham's second-floor apartment door, cops kicked it in. He was shot inside the bathroom and no gun was found. His 6-year-old brother and grandmother were in the home at the time. His little brother is seen on the video being consoled by officers. Police say they found marijuana in the home and think Graham may have been trying to flush some down the toilet when police entered the home. Meantime, the community continues to react to the shooting, meeting with the Bronx District Attorney and law enforcement Saturday afternoon.
What I told the community was just the outline of how we go about handling these cases, the fact that our presence is there. From the day of the incident, we had assistant DAs there. They were there again yesterday. They've been briefing the chief of the Homicide Bureau.
The NYPD now has a copy of the surveillance video and says it is continuing to investigate. In the meantime, an officer and sergeant on the scene have been placed on modified duty. In the Bronx, Amanda Farinacci, New York One.
Good afternoon. As most of you know, you're watching 30 frames a second. The reason why we roll that clip today is because while we're all focused on the Trayvon Martin case and a whole slew of maddening, almost inexplicable things that are occurring in the black community, from the vote to a Mad King mayor that has just seems to have gotten in touch with his inner Mein Kampf. We forget one of the most horrific cases that we've seen in the 21st century, even going back to Amadou Diallo. That is the case of Ramarley Graham, where for some strange reason, and police gave some reason that they were checking out drug dealers, and then 6,000 of them, it looks like, kicked the door in of him and his grandmother and his baby brother, and killed him in front of his grandmother and his baby brother. That case occurred, I believe, in February 2012. In May of this year, the judge threw the case out, and in June of this year, just last month, it was reinstated. So we're going to find out where it goes from there. It is my honor to have as our guest the mother of Ramarley Graham, Ms. Constance Malcolm, and the attorney for, and her attorney, Royce Russell. And we're going to talk to them. I'm going to talk to her as the mother to see how the family's doing and some of the specifics of what she was going through. And then we're going to pick the brain of the attorney to find out how this case is progressing, what he thinks are the main issues. Hopefully we'll find some way that the community can become more involved and keep this case in the media, but more importantly, keep this case in the community so that the community can force the justice system to act correctly in dealing with the slaying, I'm really measuring my words, of Ramarley Graham. If you guys are ready, you can roll my opening, and we'll be back. Excellent. perpetrator, and the perpetrator is now the victim. And that just drives me crazy. And we're back. It's a little madness here. We had a few issues in this studio, so we're kind of spread out wide and thin. We're trying to get a place for the Attorney Russell to sit. And Attorney Russell is here. The mother of Ramarley Graham is here, Constance Malcolm, and we have a show. If you can get a shot of these two, I want to introduce Constance Malcolm, the mother of Ramarley Graham, and the 6-year-old who witnessed the slaying of his older brother, and her representative, Royce Russell.
You're correct.
Excellent, excellent. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. Before we start off, because I have sort of two separate scenarios for the both of you, so I want to for you to go back, because you weren't in the house.
No, I wasn't.
So somewhere after this had happened, someone had contacted you, and I don't know whether they informed you that your son was no longer alive, or that something had happened. But take us back to the moment when you found out that something terribly, terribly bad had just, you know.
Okay, on February the 2nd, 2012, I work at Ossining. I was on my way home. Then I got
Wow, you work at Ossining.
Yeah, I'm working a nursing home in Ossining. And I'm on my way home, and I got a phone call, excuse me, that the person that called me was a tenant that lived on the first floor. And he called me, he said, are you home? I said, no, I'm on my way from work. And then he says, there's a whole bunch of police in the backyard. And I'm like, okay, I didn't think nothing of it. So I was like, okay, I'm on my way. All right. Then another phone call come in, and he says, where are you? You know, how far are you? And I said, I'm still on my way. At this time, I think it's already happened. But he didn't tell me anything. So he was very calm, so that's why I didn't pick up anything. But my instinct just told me something was wrong, because I called back and I couldn't get an answer, and I kept on calling, and I couldn't get an answer. And then when I finally got him, I said, you know, I was calling you, didn't answer. He said, how far are you? I said, I'm still on my way. He said, just take your time and come. At this time, I'm still not thinking this happened. So when I got to the block now, the block was, you know, it was a lot of police on the block. I'm still not thinking my son is dead, because he was so calm on the phone. I walk up to the, you know, I was like across from my house. It was a couple of office, and I went over there. I gave him my ID. I told him who I am. I said, I live over here. You know, what is going on? And like 4 or 5 cops kept coming back. Finally, it was I think it was a white shirt that came, and I told him, I gave him my ID, and he said, can you go to the precinct? Fine. I still don't know anything happened. So he took me, told another officer, I'm not sure if he was in plain clothes or, you know, uniform, I don't remember. And he said, can I go into the precinct? I said, fine. Got to the precinct. They took me upstairs. I think this is where they do the investigation. And it was the hallway. There's a bench. And he said to me, sit right here, I'll be right back. And he proceeded to go over to where another officer behind a half a counter thing was there. And he introduced himself and said, I'm coming from the homicide. So they never told me. I overheard this cop telling the other cop where he was coming from. So that's how I found out. So after I was there for a little while.
And what did he tell you?
He didn't tell me anything. He told the other cop.
So the police never called you?
No.
Your neighbor called you?
Yes.
Your neighbor called you? And your neighbor said that you should come over here, there's a lot of cops. No one official ever called you and said that something had happened to your son?
No.
And you get there and a homicide detective?
No, when I got there, the captain was, it was a lot of police coming back and forth to me, talking to me. Then finally a captain, I believe it was a captain that came.
Different police officers came and spoke to you?
And
Did any of them?
None of them informed me of anything. They were so calm, so that's why I didn't know something happened. So when they came, you know, he said, can I go with the police officer to the precinct? Okay, because he's still calm, his face.
And then a homicide detective at some point came and spoke with you?
I'm not sure if it was a homicide. When they took me to the precinct, the cop that took me to the precinct, there was another cop behind the desk, and, you know, he wasn't in the uniform, so I'm assuming it's a detective. And he said to the detective, I'm coming from the homicide. I'm still sitting in the hallway in the bench because that's where he told me to sit. So it's like I froze. I just froze right then and there, and I'm like, am I hearing things or what? Because if I know what homicide meant, but at this time I don't know it was my son. I don't know my baby
But
or
how
my
would
mom.
and maybe the attorney can help me with this because I'm a little confused. I'm not quite sure. Unless they were charging the police with homicide, I don't see how it's germane. But when was the moment that you first realized that your son was no longer alive?
After that incident with the police, then they brought my mom in to the precinct.
They brought your mother in.
Yeah, and then she just blurted out. She called me Little Miss. She said, Little Miss, they killed Marley.
Whoa, wait a minute. Hold up. So no one from law enforcement informed you that there was even an incident related to your son. You found out that there was a police action going on from a phone call from your neighbor, and your mother, who was there at the time, is the one who told you that your son was no longer alive.
Yes.
Incredible. Incredible. There was a 6-year-old, your 6-year-old son was there at the time of the shooting.
Yes. Shinar.
Jesus Christ. What is his mental state? How is he? Jesus Christ. Whoa.
Well, you know, we was having a.
Well, I'll interject.
All right.
It's safe to say that obviously, when you see something like that happen, you need some type of therapy. And so Shanor is participating in therapy, but still going on with his academics. Clearly, there's a lot of emotions in reference to what he saw and how he deals with it, and what he thinks of police and what he thinks of authority, and whether or not he's safe in his home, and all of those ramifications he is dealing with by way of therapy. You had expressed your surprise and shock and amazement at the conduct of police officers. And I'm somewhat amazed and shocked at your amazement and shock expression, because in our community, people of color, we have always, when it comes down to police and their authoritative figures and how they think of us, we are the last to know, and they determine whether or not we should know. And this is a prime example of them making a determination whether or not we should know something, and not even doing that with the proper respect, courtesy, professionalism, all the things that they have on the side of their police vehicles. Ms. Malcolm speaks from the heart and speaks from her reality. No one sat her down and said, this is what happened. Or, at least if you want to be as selfish as one can be and protect your own skin and not give a recitation as to what happened, then at least you can sit her down and say, look, your son was killed, and we're here to talk to you about that. Rather, they went on as business as usual, because in their mind, I'm going to put out there that Ramarley was not worthy of any type of respect, and not worthy, and Miss Malcolm was not worthy of any type of acknowledgement. And clearly the treatment of the family thereafter reflects that. And so we sit here now, fighting for justice as we did back there at the precinct, and as we sit here now.
How long was it before you actually had an opportunity to see the surveillance footage? And what was your reaction to the surveillance footage?
Well, the surveillance footage was very timely. I can't really give you a response as to the actual time, just because I may not look elderly, but time has passed on, and I can't remember exactly when. But it was appropriate enough to say that, or it would be correct enough to say that we saw the surveillance after the media put out their story and after the New York City Police Department aired what they deemed happened. A person running, which they showed on the news, a person allegedly running down the block with some type of hoodie on, a white hoodie, and a gray, and they described it as a drug transaction that went bad, or they were tracking someone for drugs. And as they put their spin on it and began to do what they do, which is character assassination, is not enough that someone has died, someone was a victim, someone that needlessly died. They soiled that person's reputation, which is Ramarley, and then went on to protect themselves, in my view, by putting out this story as to what took place. Not investigating, not doing the due diligence, not having the wherewithal, professionalism, or anything else to say, you know what, we have no comment right now, we're going to investigate this. But immediately jumped to defend themselves in any which way they could. And I'm very much curious as to where this tape came from. This is a tape that they have handy, that when events occur, they just put out there in the media. You know, I'm not one to buy into conspiracy theories overall, but how fortuitous did this tape arrive out of nowhere, and how fortuitous was the story that they aligned themselves with as to what took place in regards to the tape that they aired and they put out in the public. How quickly that happened, how succinctly that happened, how a matter of fact that happened, how the storyline was very clean, very black and white, where they then began to soil Ramarley's reputation, his character, by putting out information about his past, which was false in and of itself. To only come back to see a surveillance tape where no one was running in any apartment, no one was running at all. You saw an individual calmly going into their apartment as if they were coming home from school or coming home from the store, you know, walking into their apartment. The only people that were rushing and running and of any type of urgency was the police. What for? They can't even articulate it. What for? Only they know. And not to see the commissioner or any other media outlet, the major stations, come back and say, well, you know what, let's investigate this other story, this other tape that went out. How did that happen, and what is that about, as opposed to what we see in the surveillance? Although it was given due coverage, and although it was explained that this is Ramarley going in, no one has done that piece that says, well, here go A and here go B, here's the truth and here's not. How are these pieces moving together? What are we doing about that? And that's why in this case in total, and when we have cases like this, myself, Constance, many other family members that are out here that have suffered either or been victims of either police brutality or had a loved one die at the hands of the police, want an independent investigator to deal with this, to deal with these issues. To delve into the investigation, to air out the truths and the non-truths, to make sure that there is some transparency, and make sure that the people in the community feel that they're given their just due, and that just due is putting into an investigation of this nature. Because not only is this a life changer for the family, it's a life changer for everyone of color as to how they conduct themselves and what is private. Where is my sanctity? Where is, you know, used to be the saying that your home is your castle, is no longer that when someone can come in and murder you.
I have to admit that on the face of this, the story that they gave out with and what I saw displayed on tape is madness. There's two kinds of stories that people tell you. There's stories where they want to tell you a good story because they want you to believe their story. And then there's stories where people don't respect you and they really don't care whether you believe it or not because there's nothing you can do about it. What they offered is an explanation for what was done seems to be that kind of story, the second kind of story, where they simply do not respect you. And they really don't care whether it's a good story or not, or it's plausible or not, because there's nothing you can do about it. Correct me if I'm wrong. And information about this case has been so sparse and so infrequent that it's very hard for the public at large to get a good handle on what went down. But ostensibly, I believe that they said they were investigating drug transactions or something of that nature. Is that correct?
Well, I would say that that is correct and incorrect, because their story keeps on changing.
Okay.
One is we were investigating drug transactions. Another is that we saw him with a weapon. They have yet to put the two together and say, well, we saw him with a weapon and while we were investigating a drug transaction, but I'll leave it up to them to come up with whatever story they want. No matter how you tell the story, none of it is true. No drugs, no story. No gun, no story. It is the quintessential case where what they have put forward in the past, when it comes down to people of color and police showing, exhibiting misconduct, our people or people of color being brutalized, being victim of excessive force, there's always a storyline. The person had a gun, the person had a dangerous weapon, the person was doing something criminal. And that's what they always put forth. Or the person was emotionally disturbed. Those are the things that they always put forth. And they put that forth so quickly that, one, I think is a combination of what you say. One, they don't care if you care or not. Two, they know that New Yorkers and America in and of itself has a quick memory, or has, excuse me, a short memory. Right? Stories out today, we on to the next story next week, or we on to the next story in that next 5 minutes. And I think they really feel that we're not paying attention. That people in the Bronx community or Manhattan community, people of color, people of a certain social economic status, is just not paying attention, and just think that this is norm. And I would admit that in some communities, if you walk, young black men and young black women think it is the norm to be stopped, to be harassed, to be searched, to be questioned. And don't realize it until they go down south, or till they go to Los Angeles, or till they go to Chicago, or they go somewhere else, that, you know what, I don't get stopped and searched here nearly as much or at all as when I'm in New York. So I think it's a combination of a variety of things. But at the end of the day, this is one of those stories that the four corners speaks for itself. The video speaks for itself. No Gun speaks for itself. The death of Ramarley Graham speaks for itself. The fact that there's 2 eyewitnesses as to what occurred speaks for itself. The fact that there was no urgency to enter that apartment. If you're investigating, then investigate. Investigate calls for search warrants, calls for backup, calls for intel, calls for calling for a supervisor, calls for a variety of things. Right. That's an investigation. Right. I've been on plenty of cases where there's investigations. Right. I know.
There's
I know how that happens.
Anything I would ever see on Rizzolian Isles.
Right. Yeah. Right. As an investigation. So this was far from an investigation, and this was a rush to judgment, purely based on social economics and color, and I can't see it any other way.
See, my problem with this whole thing is that I don't even see the availability of a judgment, rushed or otherwise, because all 3 scenarios, even if they were true, does not lead to what happened.
Correct.
The only thing I can see from the 3 scenarios that they give is that they are either idiots, because only an idiot, if he actually thought that someone had a gun,
would enter the premises,
but not just that, turn his back and kick on the door.
Right.
You'd have to be a complete idiot to do that. If it's an investigation, it is totally incompetent, and it led to the death of a human being. You are telling me that Because a number, I can't even count how many police officers was in and around this area. And if you're saying you were investigating drugs, and it broke down to, I think I saw this guy do something, so let's go kick his door in, you're completely incompetent, because that is not the way I've been taught to think that an investigation of drug dealings go down. It would seem like if you were investigating, not only you would you know who was selling what and who they were I mean, you would take the time to investigate it.
Right.
But you also got to remember, he was never trained to be on a narcotics unit that he was working on.
But there was a bunch of them.
Right. So somebody was trained.
And
Right?
he right.
The supervisor was trained, right?
And whoever,
Right.
I mean, it's still an investigation. Whether or not he was trained, someone, if it's truly an investigation, the investigator, whoever that person
Or persons
would
right.
be, would have done a proper investigation. It doesn't, you know, an investigation doesn't seem to be, to me, but this is a different time that we live in, you know, 50 cops coming up to you and asking you if you sell drugs. That's not an investigation. That's sort of some strange bum rush.
Right.
So even if everything they said was true, it still does not explain how you followed a human being who was going into their house, and they locked their door, and then all of you rush the house, come in the back door.
Well, let's stop there, right?
Yeah.
Let's stop
I
there.
mean,
In
this is
reference to what you said.
This is Al-Qaeda stuff.
Right,
This
right.
is not human being stuff.
You said it, investigation. So if you're investigating, you would know that that's his home.
Correct.
If you're investigating.
Correct.
And if he's quote unquote armed and dangerous, which he was not, but if you want to throw that story out there and they're walking into their own home, then there's no urgency.
Correct.
Because they're not going to hurt someone in their own home.
Correct.
So, you know, as we break it down piece by piece, the house falls apart, right? There's termites all over the place, and we're just chewing at
Right.
the wood, and so it's going to collapse, right? So we can't go with that investigation. We really can't go with anything but the truth, that we did it because we can do it,
Right.
and we will do it again
Right.
if justice doesn't stand in the place of us not doing it.
Right.
And when you talk about people of authority, his supervisors, and anybody else that's there, it is simple as this. If I teach my son how to drive a car and I'm in the car with him and I realize he's going too fast and I have the control, the car that has the steering wheel and the other car that, you know, the other side has the brakes. We've
Right.
driven in those. I don't know how they do it nowadays, but they have those cars, right?
Right,
Where
right.
the passenger has the ability to put on the brakes, has the ability to slow it down, right? Let's make that analogy. You have the officer, you have the sergeant, the lieutenant, and all his other comrades there that may have more years on the job than him. Those are the brakes. And so they watched this car crash. They did nothing. And that's why it's always been our position that it's more than one person that should be liable, that the district attorney's office should take hold and look to and say, hey, look, you're part and parcel of this whole situation because nobody put on the brakes. Now, there may be legal strategies down the road that, you know, the district attorney is not availing us to, and that's fine. But from the community standpoint, outside looking in, there was someone that had the ability to control that car. And I'm not ready to put all my chips, even though he deserves all the chips, purely on the driver, Police Officer Haste. There's enough chips to go around.
We've, in cases similar to this, and I'm in
Wait,
cases where black,
I was about to say, there is no case that's similar to this.
But in
No one-
cases where young black people have been gunned down by the police, or even the Dominic Strauss-Kahn case,
Right,
where
yeah.
it's not deadly force. There seems to have been, it is the contention of a large majority in the community that the prosecutors themselves have not acted aggressively at best, and not in good faith at worst. How confident are you that you will have an aggressive prosecutor, or do you have a sort of wait-and-see attitude? Are you confident that, I mean, what is your sense of how this case will be prosecuted?
My sense is this, is that I want to wait and see. And the reason why I want to wait and see is because I'm not confident one way or the other, and nor should I, because history has shown us that when this movie is run, it doesn't always end the way we think it should end. Now, part of that is the people that are playing a major role in what needs to be done. The DA that's investigating the case, the DA that's presenting the case. Another part might be the facts in and of itself, and the other part are the residents of the county. Everybody has to play a part. All we've asked in this case is that justice comes forward and let the parties play their part. Let the people of Bronx community hear the facts. Let them make a decision as to whether or not an indictment should be handed down, for which they have spoken one time, and we await for them to speak again, because it's our understanding that the case will be represented, and
excuse me,
let justice take its course. Now, look, hey, Robert Johnson in Bronx County, African-American DA, has moved the chips forward in cases of this magnitude, not necessarily death, but police corruption, correction officer corruption cases. But that just shows you how far the line was drawn below of he just moving it that forward. You know, that line must have been a low ceiling. Now, I commend him for what he has done, but when you look at the other boroughs, he is, hey, the champion of going after corruption when it comes down to New York City Corrections and New York City Police Department, then we got a long way to go. We have a tremendous way to go. And as we sit here and wait for the case to be represented into the grand jury, we have to wait and see. Because it's like fighting against your left hand, but you need your left hand in order to feed yourself. You can't begin to fight against the DA's office when you need the DA's office to bring justice, to bring some type of closure to your open wound. So that's the paradox in the paradigm that we sit in.
Now there was a veritable phalanx of police personnel who surrounded the house, ultimately going through the back. It is my understanding that only one officer was indicted. That is Detective or Officer Harris. I'm not sure if it's
Police Officer Haste.
Police Officer Harris.
Haste.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. That is correct. That is correct. That is correct. And once again, we play no role in that. We're on the outside looking in.
So how did the or have you got? Are there any statements from other officers? Was he completely by himself? And everyone else was, I don't know what everyone else could have been doing with that many officers. It's
look,
impossible
I would
to logically see how this could go down.
I would love.
I'm trying.
I would love.
I
would love to have that information.
Yeah.
We don't have that information. It's unfortunate the grand jury is a closed proceedings, where people of Bronx County, where Constance Malcolm, the mother of Ramarley Graham, cannot get that information. So we don't have it. It's safe to say that in a case like this, if there's only police officers involved, the only way you can move forward is with police officers' cooperation. So as much as we want to kick down a door and stomp and be upset, which we should be, rightfully, there are officers out there that are standing up. For whatever carrot might be dangled behind them, they are standing up. And that's how a case like this moves forward.
How big is the house?
Well, to me, it's not that big.
I'm just trying to figure out how this many police officers could be.
Let me just say two things. Two things. One, to me, it's not that big, but then again, it is quite big, because where I grew up in a 3-bedroom apartment, when it's 6 of us, it looks quite big, you know. But it's very small. It's very small. The apartment is extremely small. You know, I can see you lift your left hand, you know, 150 feet away. You know, I mean, you know, but you can speak to that, Connie.
Very small. You would have to really.
There's a lot of officers in there. I'm trying to figure out, you know, how only one. Well,
you have to really. If you be in the house, you'd be like, "There's no way this happened." That's all I can say. You have to really stand there and like, "This is not right."
But
everybody that comes, they say the same thing.
One of the things we want to also point out, which is critical to the fact scenario, is that the door that they were banging on and the level that they entered was the first floor. Ramarley's on the second floor. So when they got in on that level, they went to somebody else's apartment illegally. They went to somebody else's apartment. And when they didn't see, even if they looked, right, because I wasn't there, they didn't see whoever they were looking for, and I guess in their mind, Ramarley, although he didn't commit any crime, when they didn't see him, they went a step further to go up the steps to the next apartment. So it is not on the face, well, he kicked in the door and voila, you're in the apartment. No, there was all the time. There was so much time to think, and so much time not to be a Rambo, and so much time to analyze what was going on. If you're saying that you saw the person with a gun and you kick in the first floor level and you see nobody, do you not take a moment to say, all right, let me get some more help, let me get ESU, Emergency Service System, unit here, let me do something other than run up the stairs and let me go into that apartment? See, actions speak louder than words.
Did they tell you who said they saw a gun? Who specifically said this? Okay.
No, and we're not privy to any of that information.
Because, well, first of all, contrary to what a lot of people think in America, there are quite a few black people who are licensed to carry guns.
Right.
As a matter of fact, when I was covering an event at City Hall, an eviction of a then 86-year-old woman, Mayor Bloomberg came up on the steps of City Hall, accompanied by 2 big black bodyguards. I will assume that they were armed. So I'm not feeling the gun, kick the door in, rush up somebody's house and shoot somebody, because because there's a lot of, I mean, I do a show where it's like, there's like ex-cops in there, and they, they're all expected to carry guns, whether or not they are retired or not. There's a lot of black people who are licensed and expected to carry firearms. So firearm in and of itself should not justify kicking in someone's door, going through someone else's apartment, and going up the stairs. I'm just not understanding this.
Like you said, 1, there must be some level of incompetence. 2, there must be some level of arrogance. And 3, there must be some level of disrespect towards the person and disregard towards the person for which you seek. Some people would take those mutually exclusive. I take them and put them all together and put it right on their plate, because that's what I see. I see incompetence, I see arrogance, and I see disrespect. Any one of them is bad. Altogether, it is tragic.
Yeah, hubris. Just,
And that's what we have here.
Like my mother said, because I can.
Because I can. Because I can. That's right. Because I can. Because I can. But let me say this. This puts us in a very unique place as people of Bronx County and people of color. People that far too many times have walked away from the criminal justice system and the civil system with disdain and say, look, I have other important things to do. 1, feed my family, or live my life. Hopefully this puts squarely on the map, as Connie and I go through this struggle of making people aware and putting them on notice that their participation is needed, is warranted, has been missing. And if you can't stand up for something like this, with no biases, just stand up as a person, part of the human race, part of the legal system, stand up and play a role, then there's a major problem. There's a major problem. And so we have to do our part.
They had your mother at the, what was that about? Tell me, Lucy, explain. I don't understand this. Your mother, how many hours did they have your mother down there, and for what reason? I'm trying to
They
figure
had her
this
for
out.
7 hours.
7 hours.
Questioning her, trying to put words in her mouth about her grandson.
I don't understand.
Well, once again, it goes back to the level of arrogance and disrespect. there's no way that you can tell me that someone of another color, Caucasian grandmother, would be treated in this way after finding out that their loved one is deceased. It's just no way.
All right, we're having some difficulty with the character generator, so we're not able to put up titles the way we should. If someone wants to call in, because we can't put up the phone number because we're having trouble with the character generator, the number that you can call into is 212-757-1393. Again, that's 212-757-1393. And I'm talking to Constance Malcolm, who is the mother of Ramarley Graham, and her representative, attorney Royce Russell. And I'm sorry, I put you, did I say your name when I was talking about Haste or whatever?
No, you said it correctly.
Okay.
You said it correctly.
But if you have some questions, also, we got to figure out what we can do about this. We have to keep this in the public's eye. If they think that this young lady and her family are all alone in the world, they will dog her to the end of time. So if the community is not involved in this, we have no hope. If we do not take care of each other, we will not be taking care of it all. So if you have some questions that you want to call in and ask about, again, the number is 212-757-1393. And hopefully the phone system is up.
But back with what you were
right.
saying before, once again, when you treat someone such as the grandmother of the deceased and try to vilify them, try to align them with your story, then you're not doing your job. And that's all we can really say to that. I wish we could say more, but it's just unheard of someone who's witnessing something being held for several hours and being treated in a fashion as if they committed a crime.
Especially in lieu of I mean, you know, grandmothers are like God's blessing to children, you know. And to see this happen, you know, specifically those two generations, the grandmother and the 6-year-old brother, has to be just devastating. I think of a 6-year-old black kid who, I mean, God knows there's enough obstacles to throw him off his game without this, you know. And God only knows what he was destined to be if this had not happened. And they have just like re-altered the way he thinks, the way he sees people. They have, I mean, this is just like devastating, you know.
One of the other things that I think about is, and it's very unfortunate that, you know, his brother was there. It's very unfortunate that his grandmother was there.
It's mind-blowing.
It is. Everything happens for a reason, because had they not been there, what would have been the story?
Wow.
You know, what would we have been sitting here now? I don't know if we would be sitting here. Would we? We've seen that movie before. Would we? And odds are is that the answer was probably no, we would not be sitting here.
Yeah, if you're dead, you're guilty.
We would not be sitting here.
One of the major problems, one of the major issues that we confront in dealing with issues of race is the fact that somehow media and the justice system and the political system and just the media in general has a way of enforcing this pre-existing, this pre-bias to black people, black males in general, but all black people, that if you aren't doing something, you were about to do something.
Right.
And we see this as we watch the Trayvon Martin case, is that the only one who's really on trial seems to be Trayvon himself, you know.
Right.
And there is no rhyme or reason why Trayvon would be on trial, but they never talk about George Zimmerman's, whether or not he was on drugs, or if he had played hooky from school, or if he was a good person or a bad person. But they are taking apart Trayvon's character as if there was something he could have done that justified being shot dead in the street, you know. And I'm not understanding it. It's almost like you're telling me, well, you know, if I go to church and I meet an ex-hooker, I can shoot her.
Right, right.
You know, I just don't understand why the character. Well, I do understand. Well, I'm trying not to understand because I'm in this chair.
What we should struggle with in understanding is why, as a community, we allow it. That's what we should be struggling with. Why isn't there a voice that that really shows Trayvon in the proper light, really shows Ramarley in the proper light? Most of the time, people of color, and I'm not saying these two are the same. They're separate, right? Right, completely separate. I'm just saying they're separate, but even in the analogy that I'm about to say, it's separate. People of color and those of socioeconomic wherewithal don't have the wherewithal socially or economically. Those are the people that these character assassinations really, really go after. That's one. And two, we have to say to ourselves that this is important. This is important to fight, because this sends the message that forever haunts us and sends the message out. And look, if I bump into you and you don't say anything, I'm going to keep on bumping into you. So it comes a time and point where we have to say something, because if it happens to Ramarley today, it can happen to me tomorrow. I could be driving my car and somebody says that, you know, something was in there. You know, I think that the line is forever being pushed. There used to be a time, at least when I grew up, and I grew up in the Bronx, where I would say, hey man, I can't wait till I'm like, you know, 21, 22. So this stuff wouldn't happen to me anymore. I wouldn't get stopped by the police. Somebody wouldn't say, hey, look, come over here, let me see your ID. I wouldn't get bullied anymore by law enforcement because I'm older now. And
we have a phone call and we're running out of time. I just want you to be patient, caller, and we'll get to you.
You know, that didn't happen. That wouldn't happen to me. But then you become 20 and you're like, well, now I can't wait till I become 32 so it doesn't happen to you. Now you're 32 and you say, oh, well, I can't wait till I'm 40 something. Or you say, when you're poor and you don't have the means, you're like, I can't wait till I make some money and this doesn't happen to me. Or I can't wait till I move out of this neighborhood and this doesn't happen to me. And you come to realize that you're not escaping this.
No, this whole scenario seems to be something that would be more likely to occur in 1812 than 2012. I'm just going to ask you to think about this, and you can come back because I want to take the caller. But do you think it to be a conflict of interest that the same mayor who is so pro stop and frisk is also totally in control of the education system, the education of our children, and the education system is doing so bad that has not worked out, and yet they are putting blacks in jail in record numbers. It seems to be a conflict of interest, and when you take into account the way the price of real estate has skyrocketed, and that he's picked up a cool $15–20 billion while he was in, it seems to be that he controls all hands. But we have a caller. If the caller is still there, the caller can chime right in and ask a question of our guests.
Hello?
Hi, how you doing, caller?
I'm okay. I have a question for Ramarley Graham's mother. You are very polite, and you've been that way throughout the entire process. I watch on television and watch how you conduct yourself. But I saw at the end when the judge threw out the case, and you were livid, and rightfully so. Please tell me what was going through your mind at that time when he did that. Because I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you believe that there may be justice because this was the most heinous crime ever, and everyone knew it, and then for this to actually happen, I think the whole world was just as stunned and angry as you. So I'm going to hang up. Thank you.
It's like I remember the first time when he got arraigned, and when he got that $50,000 bail, and he walked to that court, and all his comrades was there waiting for him.
What was the bail?
50,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You got that 50,000 bail.
Wow. They got people with more money than that on their credit cards in this town.
And he walked out and awaiting a whole bunch of his comrades applauding him, saying, "You the man, you the man."
Wow.
This was my child. This is somebody's child. He had a mother and father.
Wow.
And for them to come out and do that, and then to see this judge going to let him walk out again, I don't know what was waiting for him out there. And as we've been going to court for a whole year, you know, we waited for the indictment for like 4 months, and then we go into court, and then for this to happen, I felt like he won again. He's walking out of here, and I didn't get any justice. I don't know what happened to my son. And he was going to feel the pain. I was going to let him know what he did to my family. And I just lost it. I just couldn't see him walk out of there again and laughing. I'm going home, and like we always do on Sunday, go to the cemetery and go to Ramarley. I just had to let him know what I was feeling.
And I would like to commend the caller, because it's people like the callers and people in the Bronx community that has given Mrs. Malcolm and Mr. Graham the strength to carry on, because they see the light at the end of the tunnel. They see, yes, the judge threw out the case. For the moment, this case will be represented, and there'll be people sitting in the grand jury like this caller and like other people in Bronx County that'll hear the facts and will indict him again. And the voice of people of the Bronx County, the residents of Bronx County, that voice will be resounding with, "You're not going anywhere." So dispense with the technicalities, dispense with the interpretation, and let's get to the facts. And the facts will be held up to light, and the participation of folks within the legal system will speak loud and clear. And that's what Connie holds her hat on, and that's what the community holds their hat on.
Again, we're talking to Ms. Constance Malcolm. She is the mother of Ramarley Graham, and her attorney, the attorney in this case who represents her, Royce Russell. Wow. This whole thing smacks of early Jim Crow. I'm not even talking about 1960s Jim Crow. It smacks of Al Qaeda. It smacks of It smacks of the Soviet Union and the KGB and Nazi Germany being able to just kick in people's door and kill them and walk out of the courtroom laughing and joking about this abomination. It should be an aberration, but it's an abomination, and it's all so frequent. And what is most disturbing is that it seems to be not just with the blessing of the mayor and the police commissioner, but with the coaxing of the mayor and the police commissioner. This is not just an out-of-control police department. This is a systemic attack, for lack of a better word, on poor people, on black and brown people specifically. Black people, you know, bam, black and brown people, poor people, you know. You don't want to say it, but it is what it is. I mean, this is an aggressive military action to cull the herd.
Well, one of the things that we see in history has shown us, we can look at Plaxico Burress, a former NFL football player with the Giants. He possessed a gun. He shot his own self in the leg. There was not a minute wasted by the mayor and the police commissioner to get in front of the TV cameras and state what is going to happen. We're going to prosecute to the fullest. We're going to make sure that this doesn't happen again. independent, if you believe that they're independent, speaking out on something they thought was not only criminal but ridiculous. And so you have this situation where someone is killed in their own home and there's no evidence of any wrongdoing. And what we have is radio silence. Total. Not even, someone, let the commissioner say what he's going to say, and then the mayor comes in and says, well, let's investigate. My condolences to the family. Nothing.
Yeah.
Radio silence. So if that's not a signal as to how we're playing checkers and there's a group of folks that's playing chess, then we really need to rethink this whole thing.
Yeah.
Really need to rethink it. And that goes to your other question that deals with the lack of transparency when it comes down to managing the Board of Ed, managing the police department, managing real estate within New York City, and even deciding that you're going to run for a third term. That lack of transparency is overlapping almost everything that we do in New York City. And so what we ask is that not only does Ramarley Graham case stands for justice, and that means a conviction, indictment, conviction, trial, things of that nature, it also stands for transparency. Let's get an independent body in here. Let's look at the long term. Connie has walked with myself and my partner for the short term and how to manage this, knowing that there is a long-term goal because nothing can bring her son back. However, if the long-term goal turns out to be that there is a body in place that deals with these type of cases in the name of Ramarley Graham, then we have made some footsteps. Won't bring son back, but we have made some traction so we can deal with this. Because if the DA's office needs police in order to prosecute cases, then yes, the hesitancy will always be there.
Wow, we got 30 seconds left, and I got 6 more hours of questions. I want to thank you so much for coming in. We're going to try to keep this, I'm going to bug you guys because I'm going to try to put this out in as many areas as I can and enlist as many producers as I can in as many boroughs. We got 15 seconds. I want to thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. It has been my honor to have Constance Malcolm and attorney Royce Russell. Peace, we're out.